I'm Cody Crabb.
I'm Johnny Flores.
And we are the hosts of the Podcast Producer's Survival Handbook.
The Podcast Producer's Survival Handbook is here to help podcast producers, editors, and audio engineers succeed while freelancing.
All right, we are here, episode 4 now.
Cuatro, or if you're U2, uno, dos, tres, catorce.
Catorce. Have I ever mentioned that I'm fluent in Spanish?
No, you didn't. Bono isn't.
Yeah, clearly, very clearly.
Catorce.
That's 14.
Yeah.
Well, hi. Nice to see you again. We've actually launched by the time we record this episode. So if you're hearing this, we had a little bit of a backlog, which is smart. That's a good thing to do with clients. It's a nice little pro tip there. But yeah, we've officially launched, and I heard that we actually have our first fan. Is that right?
Yeah, actually 2. One was on Reddit. Yeah? I'm probably going to butcher the Reddit title. Buchmoyer, Abuchmoyer.
You know who you are if you're listening.
Yeah, you'll know who you are. They wrote just, hey, brother, just listen to your first episode of your new pod. Good blank. I'm trying to keep this PG. I'm a podcast host and enthusiast and would love to have you on our show. So, yeah.
Wow, great.
They want to have us on the show eventually.
Cool.
On their podcast. And then we had our first subscriber on YouTube, Daniel Preston. Daniel, thanks for subscribing. We appreciate that. If you're listening to this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. We've been really bad about asking people to do that.
Oh, yeah. And what's really funny is, like, who would know better than us? Like, who would remember that more than we would? Yeah. And we just still we're not even remembering to do it.
It's like doctors make the worst patients. Mechanics always have broken down cars.
I will say, though, it has been refreshing making a lot of podcasts and then doing this with someone that, like, has some background knowledge. Like, it's just it's really nice. It's really nice.
Yeah, especially us handing off production responsibilities.
I know, right? Yes. Just like you got it, right? Yeah, you got it. For our first few episodes, we decided we kind of wanted to just cover the super basics, the most basic topics we could find, and the questions we get the most often. So we've done like finding clients, and networking is probably one of the ones that I would think of as one of the most important things you can do. And so that's our topic today. And I would say we network differently. Johnny and I do. We've kind of met through networking. And that's why we're
big
here.
Networking event for podcasters.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing is like someone that goes, look, I just want to like submit a resume and get clients. Like, what would you tell them if they ask you, like, why do I need to do this? Why do I need to network? And maybe even what is networking? Like, what does it actually mean? Because you hear the word a lot in kind of business formats, but like, what does it mean to you?
To me, networking is basically face-to-face advertising. I'm going in, I'm talking to people at a networking event and basically saying, here's what I do, ask me questions about it. The great benefit about freelance and producing, podcast production, is not a lot of people know how to do it. And lots of organizations need help doing it. So as soon as they hear, oh, you do podcast production, I just get tons and tons of questions. Mm-hmm. So that's how I look at podcasting. It's basically I'm shaking your hand, introducing myself, and telling you what I do.
Well, and what it really is growing your network. So that doesn't necessarily mean like I am attempting to pitch my services to Steve, who I just met here. Like, you are telling somebody what you do, and they are now knowing what you do, and you know what they do, and now they're in your network, and they may or may not end up being a potential client. But so why would something like that be important? I mean, this is obvious, but we're just so we can talk about it.
Yeah.
why would something like that be important to someone who's trying to find new clients, to someone who is trying to grow their business? What are some unexpected maybe benefits of doing some more networking than you have been?
Quick and immediate is you may find someone who's like, I need help. We're trying to launch a podcast. We don't know what we're doing.
The unicorn that's like, maybe not even a unicorn because it happens a lot, but like the ultimate golden opportunity. Like, that's so weird. We were just talking about, I get that a weird amount, actually.
The other one is really planting seeds in people's minds, letting it be known that you're in their community, you're out here as a professional producer, editor, audio engineer, someone who can actually help them develop their podcast and launch it. So they may not need your help. They may not have the budget or even the need for a podcast, but odds are they know somebody in their professional circle, in their peer group, that's needs help. They're planning on launching one, and they don't know how to start. They know they're doing it wrong, and they're like, we need somebody to help us.
Yeah.
So that's how I really look at it, is you're the farmer out in your field planting your seeds, hoping something's gonna, come up and be harvestable down the road.
Well, and see, that's a really good point you made, because a lot of times the people that I end up talking to are like a catalyst for someone else. It's like, oh, I know a guy, or I get referred. So I would say that's one of the biggest reasons I think networking is such an important thing, because when your network is big, people know what you do.
Yeah.
Like in general. And some guy that you met at a thing, his friend on Facebook might be like, oh, does anyone know anybody that does podcasts? And he tags you. And it's a friend of a friend is the reason that I got to teach podcast production in Norway, because a friend of a friend tagged me because they knew that I used Logic and to do podcast production. And it was one of those opportunities that wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for kind of this referral sort of thing. So, okay, you have mentioned only kind of in-person networking, and you sound like you do that kind of quite a bit. I need to do a little more of that. It's very effective. You can get a lot more FaceTime and connect a personal amount with someone that way. But I kind of wanted to go over some different ways of networking. One way that I do it is online, which is, I would argue, not necessarily as effective, but you can do it more often and more easily. And maybe in that way, it's a little more helpful, just because you don't have to like wait for an event and go to a thing and pay some money. And you might just be able to kind of be where people are and then just wait and see what happens, or something like that. So a couple options I brought up were Discord servers. So I'm in a Discord server of podcasters, and that one has got me a few gigs. Just general kind of podcast production. I've found a couple of clients that were looking for like to outsource some of their production, and I've worked for people like that before. And then I've also found stuff like a Riverside Discord or a Descript Discord or something like that. There's often like a for hire channel, and it doesn't have to be Discord specifically, obviously, but like just a community. It could be a Facebook group, it could be something like that, where people are just kind of there. You don't necessarily just want podcasters, but that's a good one. And then kind of in your sort of frame of mind, find a group that isn't necessarily about podcasting, that's local to you, that you have something else in common with. Like maybe it's about Dungeons and Dragons, and then you go, you mention that you do podcast production in there, or you find a way to do a collaborative event. And, if you want to start a podcast about Dungeons and Dragons, here's how you do it. Like you kind of can educate other groups about that. So that's kind of some ways you can do it online. Reddit is another one that I've used to kind of follow topics that you were familiar with, and maybe even some podcasting groups. Reddit is okay for that, but and then I thought I'd mention this, but just in a way to kind of tell you to maybe don't bother. These online events that you get, like Zoom events and stuff, where you kind of do breakout groups and stuff. I'm going to be honest, like the ones that I've been to, and I've been to a fair amount, just because, like I said, I've got kids, it's easier for me to make those kind when I'm just online. Those kind of have had not great returns for me. It feels kind of forced and kind of weird. Like it's just, they haven't mastered the way to do that yet. Well, I don't think.
I think the other part of it too is people are just burned out from Zoom meetings from the past
that could certainly be true. Yeah.
I think people just don't pay the face-to-face stuff. You're talking to an actual human being. Yeah. They're there. You can get a sense of their sense of humor, their personality. Whereas Zoom, you're just a floating head.
Yeah. And I think they've done some things that kind of help a little bit, but I mean, and I'm not saying to completely stay away. Like if it's either that or nothing, do that. But I don't really have advice, because I just don't know. I'm just saying, like, just that may not be as effective as you think it could be.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted to bring up too is you have to contribute in a positive way that isn't self-promotion. So the way that I ended up getting connected with Descript, one of the ways is I just responded to a ton of people with questions in their Discord. I was making YouTube videos about their software. I was contributing to the community before I ever mentioned, like, this is what I do. And people often would just be like, hey, like, they just reach out to me. When you're online, you got to be careful to not come across as spammy. A good way to do it is to kind of just, that contribute and maybe drop in that you do podcast production while you're contributing, and you'll have way more success that way. And people don't mind if you self-promote in that way. But if you say like, hey, DM me if you want a podcast editor, like that's not going to work.
I was at a networking event just last night, and they call that equity. You're building equity
that's a great way to put it.
So
that's a really good way to put it, because it's just kind of a thing that you get a sense for, of like when you've earned the ability to be like, hey, everybody, like to promote yourself, but just coming right into a group and being like, hey, everybody, if anyone's looking for a podcast editor, just let me know. Like, people are going to kind of side-eye that. Like, it comes across almost, I wouldn't say desperate per se, but it comes across like a little too eager. Yeah. Exactly. That actually leads us to, you did go to an in-person event. Tell us more about this, because this is something that I am not super good at. So I'd love to hear more about kind of how you do this, where you go, how you find these places.
Yeah. I get the sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, but online tends to be more about individuals. Sorry, my dogs are walking out of the room. They got bored of this conversation. But I feel like online tends to be more about an individual who's looking for help or assistance, whereas networking events tends to be more about a person representing a business, a professional group.
I have often found that to be the case.
Yeah. So the types of events I look for.
But not always. I mean, you never know.
True. Yeah, true. There's no hard, fast, set rule for that. But more often than not, that's what I find. So the in-person events I tend to look for are anything where it's like marketing professionals, PR professionals, metro chambers, so like your local business metro chamber, anything where like people are there because they're looking to expand their business, grow their business, try to be the industry expert in the room, anything like that where their business, their organization has a clear mission and goal statement, and they want to get out in front of that. They want to have a pulpit for their organization. Yeah. So that's the type of events I look for. I'll go on Eventbrite to look for those. I know, Cody, you're not the biggest fan of LinkedIn.
Not any of. I mean, I used to be like so good at social media, and I just in recent years, like for whatever reason, I just stopped using them as much, and now I'm like, I feel like I barely know what's going on. Like I feel like pretty young. Like I feel like a pretty young guy, but like, man, I talk to like my nephew. I have like nephews, like early 20s nephews, and I just feel like a moron. I'm like, I'm that dad, like the everybody's dad that has no idea how to use Instagram. Like that's me now.
It's a talk tick. What? How do you say that? But yeah, through LinkedIn, try to follow groups, especially in your community. That's always what I turn to, is where I live, the community where I live.
Just real quick on those lines, I think it's important to find some kind of common ground, whatever that. And a lot of times it can just be like that you're local.
It's part of your, for lack of a better term, sales pitch when you're talking to these people is, I live in your community. When you hire me to run your podcast, those dollars are staying in the community, as opposed to hiring someone out of state, a county over, anything like that. So that's always a pitch I always put in there is, I'm a veteran, you're hiring a veteran. I'm a minority, you're hiring a minority. So things like that you could talk to.
I think everyone's got their version of that. Like mine is like, oh, like I'm a small business owner, a young dad with kids, like, breadwinner, just trying to make it work. So use your version of that to kind of to your advantage, not like to get sympathy or something, but like,
as a selling point. It's a strength.
People love like helping out the little guy, the underdogs, it's part of your strengths.
Yeah. It looks good to them to say we hired from within our city. We hired within our community. It's just another selling point for them.
Yeah.
For public facing, and hopefully that's something they're committed to. Look, I've been really lucky. Most of the organizations I work with, that's something they really strive to look for, is like, oh, hey, he lives in the area. But yeah, so follow on LinkedIn, getting back to that, make sure you're following the professional organizations. Like there might be a PR organization in your community. Follow your local business chamber. they'll post when they're doing events. And now that things have opened up and now that things are much more open and people are getting back together, they're hungry for in-person stuff. So make sure you show up to these. Often you will be the only person in the room that can speak to how a podcast is made, how you edit one, what the strengths are, like how do you actually launch your podcast, how do you avoid the mistakes, and I will make it as professional as your organization. The professionalism of what I do will reflect the professionalism of your organization.
Oh, I like that wording. That's really good.
So yeah, you have to be able to speak to these things at the events, and you should also be able to talk about download numbers, statistics, data about podcasting as an industry, what their ROI, the return of investment is on that podcast.
Big time. Go subscribe to Pod News if you haven't already. It's a really great way to just get like a super quick rundown, maybe like a little bit of statistics and a little bit of stuff like that it's just kind of in your head. It's a daily email. And you can just kind of have it. Yeah, Buzzsprout
puts a thing out every year. Riverside puts a thing out every year.
Yeah.
I subscribe to all of those, and I make little sheets, and I say, okay, I could talk to these three. You know, you should always tell this when you're at a networking event. When someone's like, well, why should I have a podcast? These are the three things you should be able to talk to someone when you're networking, is the reasons why some people listen to podcasts, and this is how it'll work for your company or your industry or you as an individual. People want to hear interesting stories, they want to be entertained, and they want to learn something new. So that's your pitch. That's how you should always approach it. Like, here's why you need to do a podcast. Always be prepared when you go into a networking event. Always, 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 always.
Oh, yeah. I play a game with my wife sometimes where she tells me, like, she'll just spring a business on me, or like a type of person or something, and I have to come up with on the spot like an entertaining, interesting podcast idea.
Oh, that's smart.
Well, because you never know who you're going to talk to. Like, you might be like, oh, I'm a mushroom forager. Something that's like not particularly interesting. You need to figure out a way to like make it kind of entertaining, you know?
Yep. Yeah, that's really smart.
Something that I was going to say too is I'm really referral happy. So like if there is a part of something, if there's something that like I'm talking to somebody and I can tell that there's either like a disconnect, like we're not going to work out for whatever reason, or they want something that I don't provide or something like that, I jump right on like recommending people, recommending other people. And I can't tell you how many times that has paid dividends for me. In fact, this just happened. One of my clients has a copywriter who she's really great. I recommended her because one of my other clients was looking for like a long-term sort of copywriter. And then just a week later, she's like, hey, one of my clients has a podcast and they're not happy with the people they've been working with. And she recommended me, and I landed that client because I just
lost a client. So I think I know.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, it's this guy, Johnny. She's like, I think you'd be perfect because the things that they have a problem with are like some of your strengths. And I was kind of like, not only did I get this referral, but I had all this inside information because she's worked with these people before. And I don't think she would have even thought of that had I not done that. And she was like jumping at the chance because she kind of owed me for referring her. So I recommend doing that, like being the referral guy, sharing people's links and promoting other people. It's a great way to kind of, not that you're doing it just for like gain, but like you said, get that equity in the community of like participation and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's all great tips. Yeah. Just the more you can be a resource to other people at networking events or in your community, the more it builds that equity where people want to turn to you, and you can say, yeah, I could do that for you, or no, I can't. Talk to Cody. He's perfect for that. Well, how do you go about networking? What do you say? What are your plans? I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but like, how do you build your bona fides when you're at a networking event?
Yeah. Well, I would say my strategy is to kind of just not talk about what I do. My strategy is this, to kind of chat and just make friends a little bit first. And inevitably people are going to be like, well, so what do you do? Or you're going to talk about like, you know, if you're at an event, there's a reason that you're there. And that's kind of your jumping off point, I think, usually. Like at Podcast Movement, we're like, oh, the music is way too loud in here, don't you think? And yeah, oh my gosh, it's crazy. But the food's really good. Yeah, And then you kind of the common ground. Oh, what did you come here for? Did you see any of the so just kind of general vibe chat, building a little bit of a rapport before you ever even open your mouth about your sales or about what you do or anything. And then talking about them first is kind of my strategy, is saying like being really interested and like actually genuinely having some back and forth. Yeah. So what's your podcast about? I see, or we're talking about like going at Podcast Movement, but like you said, you're here for a small business thing. So what's your business? And then if there's a way to casually mention without being like, oh, this is what I do. I would say the most important thing is establishing some kind of connection right away, and then just talking to someone without like an agenda in mind, like just genuinely talking to somebody and not making it clear, not making it obvious that you're like looking to get clients or grow your network, really, because it's almost like in poor taste to make it obvious. You know what I mean? Like, if someone's like, just, I'm here to get work, like it's even though we all kind of know that that's what we're doing. Yeah. Like, it comes across as maybe desperate. I keep saying desperate, and maybe that's not the best word, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like people don't like desperate people because
they don't want to be sold something. They want to be helped.
Well, and why would you be desperate if you were that good at what you were doing is the vibe that I think comes across. So
something that you do really well that I don't is you wear a colorful, bright shirt that like stands out in a crowd, and it sort of draws you into like talking to you. My girlfriend jokes that I have 3 colors that I wear: blue, gray, and brown. And, so I don't have anything colorful, but like something like that helps you stand out. I have a baseball hat with my logo on it. So it doesn't matter the event.
No, that's helpful though. That's really helpful.
I have my hat on with my logo if I'm out at a professional event, or even if it's just out and about and someone sees that, they're like, oh, what's with your hat? And then I tell them, and they're like, oh, we've been thinking about doing a podcast. Yeah. Or just whatever. Like, they'll see the hat. It's a natural way to be.
That's really clever.
What do you do? Oh, okay. And then I could talk about that.
I literally don't think I've ever seen you without that hat on. Like, that's how often you wear it.
I got it at the beginning of this year of 2023. I haven't taken it off. I sleep in it. I bathe in it.
No, see, that's clever. Having a little thing. So like, I've kind of made that like the shirt thing. I've kind of made that like a thing I do at these networking events. Yeah. I intentionally, before Podcast Movement, I bought like 3 super outlandish, like silky aloha looking shirts. One had like dinosaurs on it, and one has like, they're crazy. Like, yeah, and one looks like something a magician would wear, like with stars and moons and stuff. They're wacky. And
a fun magician, not a Chris Angel style magician.
No, yeah, like a really crappy. It's one of those things where I'm a little shy. I wouldn't say I'm shy. I'm not shy, but I'm an introvert. So like doing these events and stuff is exhausting to me. I don't like talking to strangers. Once I get a flow going and I'm talking to somebody, it's totally fine. And that initial like approach and stuff is so hard for me to do, like just building up to do it. But I don't come across that way. I'm sure you would probably say like, I'm surprised to hear that, because
no, not at all. Yeah, you're very personable, friendly. I never get like introvert vibes. My girlfriend's an introvert. I'm an extrovert, and and I know how hard it is for her to do stuff like that, and I'm always like, hey, it's the Johnny Show.
Well, and I just kind of am like, I enjoy it once I'm there, but that initial hurdle, and then also I need like recovery time. I'm like going back to my hotel room and like, I'm going to lay down for 2.5 hours now and just be alone, because I was around so many people.
Oh, so one other thing about in-person events, always have cards, and always get whoever you're talking to, get their card.
And the thing is, like, it's tempting to get really fancy with this, like get those tap cards or like just have a QR code or whatever. And you can do those too, but like really though, like, and this is not an old fashioned thing. Like, I am very tech forward. Like, I tried this, and it's hard to, like, everybody's got different phones and everybody's got different comfortability with technology. Everybody can just take a card and like have a card. So. Yep.
Give them your card for sure, but always get their card so you can follow up. I learned early on, I would just give them my card and hope that they follow up. And 9 times out of 10, they don't. They forget.
Well, not only that, you're not going to remember who you gave your card to. Like, it's impossible. If you give away 50 business cards, there's literally no chance you're going to remember all these people.
Yeah.
So it's really good to like have that kind of, and in fact, I actually, when I do these events and stuff like that, I try to write everything down, like who I talk to, what they do, things like that, because odds are they're going to reach back out to me, or I'm going to try to get in contact with them or whatever. So just having like, even if I don't remember names or something, I'm just like redhead lady with the weird purse, and like just anything I can remember.
Laser tag. Loved talking about laser tag.
Exactly. Yeah. See, because the whole point is obviously you want to remember who they are, but like any information that you can remember, I think that kind of doing a quick download after you get back, or like something like that.
That's smart.
Because that way you just, if you don't have a card from them, then you're going to need to do something like that. So.
And I follow up the next day. I don't do it the night of. I follow up the next day just to keep some of that desperation sweat out of the email.
Smart. That's so smart. Well, and the other thing too is you don't have to. Yeah. Also, this isn't dating. Like, just reach out. Like, there's no
real quick.
Yeah. There's no timeline that is like, just don't stress about that. I see a lot of people like, how long should I wait before I follow up? Yeah. Like, don't like email a million times in a row, but like every 4 or 5 days is fine. Like, that's enough time where it's like, they just probably forgot or whatever. And eventually they're going to say, like, if you email them without stopping, they'll eventually either say, hi, let's book a time, or we're actually going to go a different direction eventually. And because they don't want you to email them forever. So and they won't ignore you forever either. Eventually it'll come to the point where they'll be like, hey, sorry, we need to just take care of this right now.
Cool. Well, I think that's a lot of good, actionable items and tips and advice. I wish I had known about this stuff when I first started off, especially the importance of networking. I'm trying not to say double negative here. It's never turned out poorly going to a networking event.
Yeah, at best neutral, like lose a few bucks and then you've met people.
But. And most of them are free anyways. It's just the ones that are put on by professional organizations, like a association of
like a small business association or something like that.
They'll charge you, there's like a $20 fee to get in, but it's usually worth it. Well, if people want to follow you, Cody, or reach out to you, how do they do that? Yeah,
so you can check out my website, codycrabb.com. You can get Descript and check it out and try it if you like it. You can go to descript.cc. That's my referral link. Get in touch with me if you have any questions or anything for me specifically. But if it's anything for like the podcast in general, or if you want to kind of follow the podcast, what should they do, friendo?
Well, we're not on social media, so you have to email us at podcast. Oh, my dogs are coming back in. Sorry, everyone.
Oh, he's done. He's done.
Oh, he's wrapping up. Let's go back in. Email us at podcastsurvival@gmail.com. And if you want to shoot an email to me about anything, Johnny at Flores Podcast Productions. I'm pointing at this at my hat for
That's really
the
nice.
YouTube viewers. But shoot us a question, shoot us emails. If you need tips, advice, if you want us to be guests on your podcast, anything like that.
Or suggest a topic. That's another good thing.
Yeah, topics too. Podcastsurvival@gmail.com. We appreciate it and wish you the best of luck in your podcasting endeavors.
Bye.
Bye.